I'm delighted to say that Peter Macfarlane is back in the studio from the Blue Room. And once again, Peter, it's good to see you today.
Yeah, great to see you, Paul. Thanks very much for having me.
Well, do you know what? I'm delighted you could make the visit into the studio today because, of course, as I say, a very emotional weekend with that final game for the men against Southampton tomorrow. But of course for you, Peter, it's not really goodbye to Goodison, is it? Because as we know, you're heavily involved with the women's game and with the news that we heard this week that Goodison will become the home for Everton's women in September, which is just brilliant news. So I have to begin by asking, how are you feeling this weekend?
It's such a strange feeling, to be honest with you. I think if that news hadn't have come out this week about Everton women moving to Goodison Park, I think you playing that song as we were about to come in, the Elton John, guess that's why they call it the blues. I think that would have been enough for me to burst out into tears. So, it is kind of the relief of knowing that Goodison Park isn't going to end up as a pile of rubble. I can't even put it into words, to be honest with you. It's mixed emotions. Having said that, tomorrow is the last time I'll be sat in my seat next to me dad, the same seat we've had for 27 years now. The same stewards, the same people around me. It's going to be so emotional tomorrow, and it's so hard. I think every Evertonian will be feeling the same.
And I think you're right, and I think it is about the people that you meet and you associate with when you go to the ground. And, you know, it doesn't matter, does it, sometimes, what's going on in your life, what's going on with work, what's going on outside of football. It is that situation where you can go to Goodison and you can forget your troubles. You can go and sit there for 2 hours on a Saturday, Sunday afternoon, and you're in a different world with the people that you associate with the football club. And that is what's going to be so difficult for so many Evertonians to leave behind. Yeah,
definitely. I think I was talking about this earlier on in the week about how it's funny that you've got a core group of people who sit around you. You might not even necessarily know their names, but you've known them for years, but it's too late now to ask. Do you know what I mean? Like, you've got these familiar faces. You never see each other outside of Goodison Park. You know, you don't see them in the street. You don't see them anywhere else. But when you're in Goodison Park, they are just part of your core, like your Goodison family, if you like. And it's going to be so sad to say our final goodbyes to tomorrow. By chance, they might end up being sat next to me at Bramley-Moore, but we just don't know, do we? It is such a strange feeling. It's a really surreal sort of thing. It's something, you know, every Evertonian have been going there since the day I was born, pretty much. So to know that when I leave tomorrow, that's the last time I'm going to be with those particular people in that particular seat. It's a hard one.
Because, of course, Evertonians, quite rightly, are looking ahead to the future as well. They're looking ahead to Bramley-Moore Dock, or the Hill Dickinson Stadium, as we now know it's going to be called come the new season. They're looking ahead with excitement and positivity, but at the same time, I think this weekend is a weekend for reflection and looking back. In terms of the Grand Old Lady, Peter, what's that place mean to you?
It's everything, isn't it? It's everything. You know, whether it's, as I say, I've sat next to my dad in that particular seat for so long. And as you've said before, whatever's been going on in my life from when I was a kid up until now, Goodison's always been that place where I can go and just forget about everything else that's, you know, and just concentrate on what's happening on the pitch. It's not always been great, I'll be honest with you. It's always, you know, we've obviously had our ups and many downs, but even in those moments, I feel like Everton Football Club is built on that community and that close bond that we have. And even in the worst times, we all stand together. And I think that's at the core of the club. It is such a family unit, if you like. And I think we've proven that over the last few years when times have become really difficult for us. And I think the Goodison Park and the people in Goodison Park are the ones who stepped up and really dragged the players over the line. And as I say, you've got to have a bit of backbone to support Everton, I think. And I think it was actually Tony Bell who said something about it, you know, it's character building. And I totally agree with that. It is. It's character building, me and an Evertonian. You know, for any Reds listening, how many trophies you've won since the last time we won one. I'm sure that's something that you remind us of all the time. But just bear in mind, but we still keep going every week. We don't turn our backs on that team. We don't turn our backs on the club. We're still there every week. And we're fighting for in recent times, the survival of our football club. So I think leaving Goodison Park behind and leaving those memories and leaving behind that sense of community, the one thing that we will be taking with us is that community, and it will be those people. And wherever we play our football, whether it's at Goodison Park or in future at Bramley Moor, Everton Football Club is the people, and the people will be there.
And already today, of course, Peter, you've been at Goodison Park this morning, and also the area surrounding the ground as well. Just tell us a little bit about what you've been up to.
Well, I feel like we haven't left Goodison Park for about the last month or so, because we did a big display for the Ipswich game, which was our last with the 1878. It was our last display, like before, pre-match display, if you like, inside the ground. And then we mentioned to the club about doing a coach greeting for the players, one final coach greet. And that kind of snowballed a little bit, because at first we were just thinking, right, just tell everyone to get to a certain place at a certain time and we'll just go with it. But then, as we always end up doing, the next thing it was, right, let's get some flags out, let's do this, let's do that. So we've been down at Goodison Park today with some scaffolding, putting flags up on the Winslow, on the Abbey, on the Hot Walk. And we're just getting some other bits ready for tomorrow. So yeah, since 10 o'clock this morning till about half an hour ago, we were down at Goodison Park. But yeah, it's one of those things, isn't it? You've got to see the old lady off in style, haven't you?
Yeah, you have indeed. And of course, tomorrow we know will be a day of celebration. We were just saying off air that possibly more of a celebration tomorrow, knowing that the grand old lady is not going to be demolished at the end of the season. And we know it's going to be a party atmosphere tomorrow, Peter. Current and past players will parade after the game tomorrow. There's going to be live music after the game as well. And really, as I say, it's going to be a real party atmosphere, isn't it?
It is, yeah. And we could hear some of the sound tests going on before, trying to see if we could, hear any hints about who was on, but no, it was just, they were just testing the sound system, I think. But yeah, it's going to be special. I think the coach welcome beforehand, we're all getting down there for about 8 o'clock in the morning. I think it's going to be a party atmosphere after the game as well. Obviously, for anyone lucky enough to be inside Goodison Park, Everton are having a, post-match sort of presentation type thing. I'm not really sure on the details of that, but I'm sure that'll be good for everyone inside the ground. But even after that's finished, I'm sure there'll be celebrations, if you like, or certainly raising a few drinks to Goodison Park, going on well into the night on Goodison Road, County Road, and everywhere in between.
I can imagine there's going to be a few sore heads on Monday and possibly quite a few people phoning into work saying that they can't make it on Monday as well, I would have thought.
Chance, yeah.
Absolutely. I think we should also just acknowledge as well, Peter, that since the birth of Everton Football Club in the late 19th century, the club and the ground itself have shown themselves to be innovators in the world of football. And I think sometimes it's easy to gloss over this, but Goodison Park was the first ever purpose-built football stadium in England, the first ground to install under-soil heating, the first ground to have dugouts, and even half-time, full-time scoreboard facilities as well. That all began at Goodison Park back in the day. Now, some of that now may sound very basic, but at the time, it was all groundbreaking stuff, wasn't it?
Absolutely. Floodlights as well. Floodlights, another one. I remember I did a tour a couple of years ago with a lady called Lily Barnes, and Julia Bowles actually done an incredible piece of journalism.
She's an incredible woman, Lily Barnes, isn't she?
Lily Barnes. And Lily was she had this moment where she reels off all of the firsts of Goodison Park, and honestly it went on for about 5-10 minutes. She was just reeling one after another, and I think Goodison Park is such a special place, and I think even Reds can appreciate it. I've got a lot of Red mates who do go to the games, and they've been to Goodison Park a number of times. And I think if you're a football fan, you can appreciate Goodison Park for what it is. And we've had messages, as in the 1878, we've had messages from fans up and down the country, whether it's, West Ham fans. West Ham are obviously have been in the same position where they left Upton Park or the Blaine Ground and ended up at the London Stadium. I think we're in a slightly different position where our ground is actually built for football. But it's still, it's such an iconic stadium. But as you said at the start of the show, It's such a massive relief that it's going to be used from next season onwards, and what a statement of intent from the Freaking Group.
Peter Macfarlane is with us from the Blue Room, talking all things Goodison Park this afternoon. And Peter, we were talking before that song about the move to Goodison for the women's team from the start of the new season. And of course, you know, when the Friedkin Group bought Everton Football Club at the end of last year, they detailed 5 or 6 priorities that they were going to deal with once they'd bought the club. And one of those was investment in the women's game. Now, they may not have detailed at the time exactly what that meant, but I have to say, to keep Goodison Park open as a fully functioning stadium is a huge statement of intent, isn't it, in terms of what the Friedkin Group want to do for Everton moving forward?
Absolutely, and what a statement of intent in terms of not just for Everton Football Club, but for the WSL, to have that iconic stadium now, you know, in that league. I think it's an absolutely incredible decision, fantastic decision from the Freaking Group. It doesn't surprise me, to be honest with you, that they do have that commitment, because I've seen, I think when they first were interested in buying Everton, we were looking, as Everton Women's Supporters Club, we were looking at their track record with Roma women, and they haven't won the league this year, but the previous 2 years they won it over in Italy. I think the Freaking Group take women's football very seriously, and they can obviously see a lot of area for growth. I think that the women's side has been neglected for a long time, in my opinion, at Everton Football Club, and not necessarily by choice, whether it's financial. I think it was probably more to do with financial reasons, but it's certainly an area which, when you're looking at a business and you look at potential areas for growth, the Everton women's side of it has got massive potential, huge potential. And the first thing you've got to do is make it comfortable for people to come and watch the football and make people feel welcome. And what better place to play than Goodison Park? And
we spoke before about the firsts at Everton and the first at Goodison Park. And Goodison Park will now be the largest dedicated women's football stadium in England as a result of the move. But clearly, how the capacity of the stadium is managed is going to be really important, isn't it, in terms of the match day experience?
Yeah, definitely. I think, obviously, the size of Goodison Park, you know, they sort of released some of the images this week about their mock-ups of what they expect it to be. It seems as though that the upper tiers may not be open for the majority of games, if you like. But what I would say is that it gives us room to grow into. So as the women's game does grow, I've seen people throwing out stats about the attendances at Walton Hall Park and how can you justify moving into Goodison Park. Well, for one, Walton Hall Park only had about 200 seats that actually had a roof over them. The rest of it was all standing areas around the edge of a pitch in the middle of a park. In the middle of winter, with the wind and with the rain and the snow, it wasn't exactly the best place to go and take your kids to go and watch a game of football. Goodison Park instantly improves that just by having a roof. Never mind the toilets, the facilities, everything else that's built up around it. I'd like to think that just by solely being in Goodison Park, we will see a massive upturn in the amount of people who will want to go next season. And what I would say as well, for people who haven't been to see Everton women yet, I can't give them enough praise in terms of what I think of that squad of players and that manager, because they absolutely live and breathe Everton Football Club. And if you want to see players who represent our badge and our club with absolute pride, it's get down to Goodison Park next season and go and support our Everton women. And as I say, give yourself the chance to go and watch them.
And I've seen as well a number of social media posts as well, which are very touching, Peter, as well. One here from a dad who says, I'm looking forward to taking my little girl to watch the women play at Goodison Park next year, because then she could make her own memories of the grand old lady. Another one here says that he told his daughter, who is only 4 years of age and obviously aware that we are leaving Goodison, that the women's team will start to play there instead. And her reply was, so I can play there, Dad, when I'm older. And this is the thing, isn't it, about, you know, this is the motivation for the women to get involved, and the girls now who are looking at Goodison Park and thinking, do you know what? I might be able to play in that stadium in years to come.
Absolutely. And when you consider it's only probably the last 5 or 6 years where women's footballers in this country were able to actually make a career of it and are professional and get paid properly. This generation is the first generation of women's footballers who have been in that position. So going forward, you know, when you look down, if you want to look into the future in 10, 20 years' time, just look at where the women's game can be. But you start off by inspiring the youngsters in the city. You know, it's no longer just a case of, well, the lads can go and play football and potentially break through and make a career out of it. Now it's, well, the little girls in the city can do the same. And I think that's an incredible thing. And, you know, for any mum or dad out there to know that their little girl has got the same opportunities as their little boy. And I think that's a great thing. And Goodison Park, what a way to continue Goodison Park's legacy than to inspire the next generation of little girls in this city.
It is indeed. And of course, we also know that Walton Hall Park had been deemed too small a venue for the Women's Super League for Everton to continue playing there. So they had to find a new home anyway. And of course, I think it's fair to say, Peter, that Brian Sorensen has alluded to the fact that any conversation he now has with potential new signings for Everton, those conversations are going to be so much easier because he can now offer Goodison Park as a place for these players to play on a regular basis. I mean, that is huge, isn't it?
It's huge. It's huge. And you can't underestimate that. And especially, I think, looking at the reaction on social media as well, it's making waves. And it's the type of, because Goodison Park is such an iconic stadium and because it will be solely for Everton women, it's got to, I mean, any player would want to go and play at Goodison Park. And now we've got the freaking group in as well, who, by the way, did back Brian Sorensen in January and put the money where their mouth was, brought in the likes of Kelly Gargo, Hayley Ladd, brought these, you know, fantastic players in. I cannot wait to see what business we do in the summer. So not only now have you got an improved transfer budget, not only have you got a great manager who players want to come and play for from all over the world, now you've got the financial backing and you've got Goodison Park to offer them. Honestly, I'm so excited to see what we can do with this team.
And in terms of the campaign that we've just seen, it was an 8th placed finish for Everton this season, the same as it was last season. But we should say there was a notable improvement in results for the second half of the campaign as well. How do you reflect on what we've seen from Everton's women so far this season, or indeed this season? How do you reflect on the campaign that's gone by?
Well, I think it was really tough at the start. Can't underestimate just how hard it was. We lost, I think it was our first 5 games in the league. We lost on the bounce. We lost 2 of our most important players very early on. Aurora Gali, who was our player of the season before. Inma Gabaro came in with a big reputation, Spanish international. Both Yaya and Inma did ACL injuries in the first 2 games back to back. So the impact on the squad, not just in terms of losing 2 players, but, you know, the 2 big personalities as well to lose in so early on. I think that really did knock us. We lost our captain Meg Finnegan halfway through the season to another cruel ACL injury. So we've had a lot of knocks, but one thing about this team, I always say it, they never give up. They always carry on fighting. There's no sulking, there's no giving up, there's no pointing fingers and blaming everyone else. They look at themselves and they go, right, we're going to go out there and we're going to, you know, fight for Everton Football Club. And that's what makes me so proud of them. There isn't a bad personality in that squad. They all stick together, and especially when times get tough, and that's what Everton Football Club is.
And you talk about it being a big summer for signings for Everton, especially with the news about Goodison Park. For you, Peter, what needs to happen, do you think, this summer to really give Everton the best chance for the new campaign? Well,
I think, first of all, we need numbers. We need to bulk out the squad. I think we've got a very, very good core of players there at Everton now. I think one thing, because of injuries and because of, you know, the fixtures and everything, I think we did suffer with a lack of depth at times this season. The January transfer window helped massively, but if we can bring in more numbers, obviously there's a lot of turnover in the women's game as well. We've already, announced that we've let the 4 players are unfortunately leaving, so we've got to replace them. But I just look at us now and think we're in a position now where maybe we're not, you know, trying to, you know, shop in the bargain basement. We're actually going to be able to go out there and spend money and go for top players. And by the way, Brian Sorensen's done an incredible job, because every signing that he's made, every player he's brought in, even without money, has been brilliant. But if we can just add that little bit of extra quality, certainly, you know, in the final third, to go alongside Tony Payne and Kelly Gargo, I think we can be a real threat to anyone in that league.
And Peter Macfarlane from the Blue Room is still with us this afternoon. It is a mad situation, this, isn't it, Peter? And also hugely exciting for Evertonians, that in the space of just a few months, you've got new ownership, you've got the return of David Moyes to Everton, you've got a beautiful new stadium as well to look forward to. A crazy situation, very much a line drawn in the sand. But how do you assess the improvement in performances that we've seen from Everton since the return of Moyes at the start of the year?
Well, I think first and foremost, it's been nice to see us actually try and attack teams and not just sit back and try and grind out results. We've actually had a go at teams. Obviously, David Moyes is still going to be limited because he's managing the same players who were there under the previous manager. I've always been one to say that I wouldn't disrespect the job that Sean Dyche did, but I think I'd said to you at the time, it was well past this time at the club. I thought he'd taken us as far as he could go, but Moyes, one thing that he did instantly was galvanise the support again. It's the first time in a long time where I'm looking at a manager thinking, I trust you with a transfer budget and I trust you that you can get this right. Which is a huge thing as a Blue, the amount of managers we've gone through. But I think it's only right as well. You know, you talk about Goodison Park. For anyone sort of my age or even a bit younger, I think David Moyes played such a huge part in our enjoyment of Goodison Park over his first tenure at the club. So I think it was only fitting really that he came back and saw Goodison out and will be the one to lead us out at Bramley Moor.
And I mentioned to you before, as we know, 13 players out of contract at the end of the season. He was asked about this in the pre-match press conference, and he says that he's got no current plans to oversee a huge overhaul of the squad in the summer. He said, I think it's too big of a job to do to get it all done at once, but we will try to do our best to get ourselves better and a bit higher up the league if we can. I'm going to talk about Ashley Young in a second, but in terms of maybe ambition for Everton's men for next season, is it a realistic ambition, do you think, to see Everton challenge for European football next season?
Well, it's going to be a tough ask. Obviously, we've seen this season the amount of teams who have flown up the table. You look at Nottingham Forest, you look at Bournemouth, you look at Villa, you look at Newcastle. Those European spots now have got a lot of competition. You only have to look at where Man United and Tottenham are in the league below us. It's obviously a really tough league, but having said that, those teams are the example, aren't they? They show that it's not actually, it doesn't take too much. You need a bit of stability. You need to get the right signings. You need to get the right players through the door. But if you can start the season off strongly and get that little bit of momentum, get that, positive feeling within the squad and within the club, who knows? But again, it is going to be dependent on, one, keeping our key players, Jared Branthwaite and Jordan Pickford in particular, so key for Everton Football Club. So it's not just about maybe replacing or keeping hold of some of these players out of contract. I think we've got to make sure we keep the core of our side together as well. But again, I get what David Moyes is saying. We've seen in the past where we've gone out and signed too many players at once. And I feel like sometimes when you do that, you unsettle the core of the squad, and it can be, and the core of the dressing room. I think you've got to be careful about just going in and making wholesale changes in one hit.
I think it's easy to say, isn't it, when you've looked at some of the performances this season, to say, do you know what, let's just get rid of a lot of them. But actually, the reality is you need some consistency within the squad for the start of the new season. You know that the players, if you get 13 brand new players coming into the squad, where's the consistency? How are they going to gel?
Well, I think we saw that under Farhad Moshiri. When we went out, there was that summer where we went out and spent a lot of money and somehow ended up with 3 number 10s we just signed, and we already had Ross Barkley. So I think, I've seen it before with other teams. I remember QPR did the same thing when they got money. They went out and basically just completely gutted the squad and ended up getting relegated. I think Forest struggled last season because they'd signed so many players. Now the players have settled in. They're doing better, but you've got to be really careful when you come in and you don't lose that little bit of leadership in the dressing room as well. I think that's another reason why he's come out this week and spoken about Seamus Coleman and said that he sees Seamus as being still on the playing staff for next season. I think he's so important to have that leader in the dressing room and someone who can almost be a manager on the pitch or in the dressing room, a second almost manager, but someone who knows what the club is about and someone who can lead and just inspire those players and let them know exactly what the football club is all about. Yeah,
there's no deal done yet, I believe, to keep Seamus there because his contract does expire at the end of the season. But you're right, Moyes said, look, he is staying. I need his leadership quality for next season. One player who isn't going to be staying, I believe, is Ashley Young. What can you tell us on that?
I'll be honest, I was a little bit surprised. I think there was some murmurings yesterday that he may have been offered a new contract, but I don't know how true that is, but certainly there was talk of it yesterday. I think Ashley Young, to be fair to him, has been a really good, really good addition in terms of a squad player. I think he's kept himself incredibly fit. He's 39 now. He's nearly, coming up to 40. You'd think he would have had his feet up on the beach by now, but but yeah, fair play to him. Whenever he's been called upon, I think he's done a job for us. We're slightly surprised with that one because I just think that he's still got the legs and he probably does still have another year in him. But having said that, maybe he's looking at it thinking, well, maybe he fancies himself to still have some more minutes in those legs and wants to see out his career by playing regular football. So yeah, but whatever happens with Ashley Young, it appears that Everton have now today announced that he will be leaving. Wish him the best of luck, because I think, he's certainly been there through a really tough time for Everton, but certainly never shied away.
Absolutely. And of course, we'll talk more about the squad changes as the summer continues. Despite all the razzmatazz of tomorrow, it is still very much business as usual for David Moyes tomorrow. There's a game to be played. There's 3 points to be won tomorrow as well for Everton. And, Moyes has told his players to keep clear heads for that game tomorrow. 3 points are at stake, as I say. How do you see this game playing out tomorrow?
Well, I think we've got to be really careful because I thought this would be typical of Everton. I saw this stat the other day that Man City's last game at Main Road was against Southampton and they got beat 1-0. And I'm just thinking, just don't let history repeat itself. Everton have got this thing, this real amazing habit of history repeating itself. I really hope that we go out there and get those 3 points tomorrow, because I just think that, for the fans, it will be such an anticlimax. But also, it's so important in the Premier League. Every position is worth millions. And given our financial position over the last few years, given the fact that PSR is still a thing, regardless of new owners, every position is so important. So if we can win tomorrow, it kind of solidifies us, in that 13th position. And if results go our way, that could be where we end up. And again, because of the league being so tight, we don't want to drop any more.
And also good news that Jake O'Brien is going to be fit and available to play in that game at Goodison tomorrow. I mean, he's been really impressive, hasn't he, young Jake, this season?
He has, and he was almost frozen out by Sean Dyche, which was a shock, to be honest with you, because Dyche, we didn't spend much money last summer. Jake O'Brien was one of the big signings, if you like, and he found it really difficult to get into the side. But I think David Moyes was really clever with what he did. He obviously had a settled centre halves with Brantwaite and Tarkowski, but he's done something similar with Jake O'Brien as what he did with Jolie and Lescott, where he's played him as a full back, obviously with the long term goal of moving him into centre half. And I think that's a really clever way of doing it, of getting him settled into the league, getting him up to speed. And I think he's been fantastic, Jake O'Brien, not only defensively, but also going forward as well.